everybody. Thanks for joining me today, as always, on Retain Trust. Today, I have my good friend and fellow Chicagoan, Kimley Cox, here on the show from Drive Talent. Kimley, say hello. What's new in your world this year?
Thank you so much, Karl, for inviting me on. Letting go and not taking life so seriously has just made a huge difference. And I think it's made me more productive, more happy, getting out more, enjoying, life. So,
I love
yeah.
it. I just am coming off of, as we record this, a 2-week vacation with the family. And yes, every time I do that, I realize how much I should just care a little less about some things.
Yes,
Yeah.
let go of the grip.
Right. We're always, as business owners, we tend to be these hard driving type A personalities, like very high control and always want to do more and be better. And I think that's good, but it's probably got a limit. And we probably hit that limit sometimes. So good to pull off and remember that. Tell me
Life
about
is
Drive
too
Talent.
short. So I founded Drive Talent. It's been 6 years now, 6 years ago, right as the pandemic was kicking off. So perfect time to start recruiting for. Drive Talent we're a retained search that focuses on precision manufacturing. So really anyone in finance, engineering, operations, quality within custom manufacturing businesses. And so they're serving industries like aerospace, automotive, medical, semiconductor, energy space. So we've been doing it for quite a while, but have really kind of put a stake in the ground over the past 6 months saying, this is our expertise and this is where we want to continue to grow.
Very cool. What was
Yeah.
the genesis of this business like then? Were you in recruiting before? Did you know this industry before? How did that come about?
So I've been in recruiting for about 28 years now. So went to graduate school for psychology, thought I wanted to be a therapist, and realized like if I were seeking out a therapist, I would not want me as their therapist because I'm very much like you referenced, like achiever. Let's get stuff done. And so sitting in a therapy room week after week and not seeing like we need to see incremental changes here. So actually discovered recruiting was more of okay, this is a nice translation to hearing people's stories and connecting and being curious about someone's journey, but doing it in more of a professional setting. So I grew up in recruiting, ran college recruiting, led recruiting teams, eventually went to executive search, was in financial services, but then executive search exposed me to more of the manufacturing side, some really big manufacturing companies and the C-suite roles. But that led to me recognizing like, wait a minute, like there's a lot. I'd be on a plane all the time if I was working for this large search firm and wouldn't see my family and working, very long hours. So eventually realized like I don't want to have all this very high overhead too hanging over me where it's like I'm going to earn this much and so much is going toward this big company's overhead. So founded my prior firm that I co-founded was Waterstone. My co-founder was actually my daughter's father, my first husband, and started the company after we had divorced, and it took off very quickly. So as a founder, it was like I didn't really have to learn a lot of the building blocks in the beginning because it grew so quickly. And so much of it was like referral business and then return business. And so we went from like two people, the two of us at the kitchen counter to I think it was like 15 people within about 3.5 years.
Wow. Yeah.
Landed some really large projects, worked across a lot of industries. And then after about 5 years, this is another maybe part two of a podcast to share all the things I learned
Right.
from that experience. But both of us deciding to, part our ways ago, like while we were still in a good place and niching down. He wanted to niche down into the autonomous mobility industry. And I was still going broader than that on the executive side. So that's how Drive Talent was born. So Drive Talent's my first company that I've founded on my own.
Yeah, very cool. I mean, I have a bunch of little things to dig into there that are really interesting parts of this story. So starting business with your ex-husband, That's
Yes.
an interesting and challenging choice. I'm curious to hear, like, did
Yeah.
you guys realize we're just not good, marriage partners, but we might be good business partners? Like, we still get along to a certain, obviously you had some relationship there. Like, how did that work?
We met when we were very young. I wasn't even 21. No, and today he's a very dear friend, and we actually partner with each other on some search work when things get really busy for either of us. So our
That's the best
daughter.
case scenario. If
Yeah.
you're going to have an ex, like you want them to get along and you've got a
Yes.
daughter together.
I think it's the result of taking the high road many times and not,
Mm,
taking things personally. But we've always done well on the business side of things. So
yeah, cool. So walk me through as you started Drive Talent, you mentioned it was kind of like pretty broadly focused at first, but you kind of came out the gate, I assume, with a bit of staff already and a bit of client base already, because you guys probably divided up the clients and he took his
good.
niche and you kind of took the rest of them. So you kind of started with something on day one, which is awesome. But how did you start to make that discovery that you need to become a more specialized provider? Like when has that how has that happened?
A little more detail on the day one. So, yes, there were 6 team members who came with me when we separated
Hmm.
out the business, and, it was a pretty easy way to divide up the clients, but really, I mean, we started out Q1 with being the strongest quarter. Like, I was really excited. I was like, "Wow, this is we're in for a good ride." Then there was the lockdown, and
Right.
really, Carl, like 80% of our business evaporated.
Oh,
So
yeah.
then it was the tough decision. Fortunately, I did not have to let, the team go. They had other opportunities, that they were able to kind of go into, whether contracting or full-time, and, find something in there because they knew there was no way we could
Yeah.
sustain this for very long. But so the benefit of being in EO, how we came to know each other, entrepreneurs organization, is the message constantly of, be known. If you're known for everything, you're not known for anything. And it took me a long time to get that message. It has to be like pounded into my brain.
Yeah. Yep. Totally.
Because it's the fear of passing up revenue
Yeah.
when it's
Yeah.
like, oh, well, we can't afford to say no to that. And
Yeah.
what if but it has the opposite effect. It's like by doing that, then you're actually missing out on people really knowing what they can come to you for. So it was tied with both looking at like what much of our search work had been in historically the space that I've worked in, but also more importantly, my passion. Like,
Mm.
what am I most interested in? If I'm going to be talking about a certain space and an industry, custom manufacturing, precision machining, I want to be fascinated by it because then I'm curious. I ask a lot of questions. The people I'm interviewing and clients like help me understand this. It's been over the past couple of years, it's been learning a new language too. So it
Hmm.
satisfies that kind of the curiosity and the newness of things. Like
Yes.
every day I'm learning
Yeah.
something new about what
Yeah.
it does or what a company does.
The reason I ask about niching down is it comes up in almost every episode I do of the show because almost everybody has gone through a journey like yours where they started probably too broad and kind of realized they had to pull it back in, or maybe they, started off in one niche and had to pivot into something else. Like again, this is just comes up every time because we're all dealing with the same problems of being really small businesses and trying to figure out how we, incrementally grow. But I think what's interesting that you mentioned there is the understanding the language of an industry gives you this superpower. And this is something I've seen in both of our agencies that are very small but very niche down. Is that by getting on a sales call and immediately knowing the kinds of words this client wants to hear to make them, feel like I'm in their in crowd, it just
Yes.
builds trust immediately. And it's amazing how when I have a conversation with somebody who's out of that niche and they're looking for some services that might overlap with us, I struggle because I'm like, I don't know how they talk. I know how these guys, my clients talk, but I don't know how these guys talk. And it's always hard. And I always just feel this like resistance. But when I get on the phone with the right kind of fit person who's in, the right industry, it just becomes clear that like we just jive a lot faster. And so I think you're bringing up something that maybe doesn't get mentioned as much as other things around niching down. But I really like that you pointed that out because I've seen that same thing.
Absolutely. And it's also staying abreast of like what's going on in their world.
What trends are they fighting
Yes.
or hearing about? But and imagine in manufacturing a lot of legal and government changes that impact them, tariffs or whatever. So you've got to like, yeah, that's a really good point.
That and what we're seeing too is this real that the tension is, I call it like kind of like the barbell effect, where you might have people who are entering the industry, like graduating or coming out of more of a tech school and are not yet, to the point they're needing to develop and be trained and all of this. But really, there's a big wave of people retiring and walking out
Mm.
with all of this knowledge and not being able to retain that. So there's a lot of pressure right now, especially in custom manufacturing, to with so much more coming in and need from their customers to produce product, and the talent is the gap.
So this actually is a great transition point because one of the big topics I wanted to get into with you is recruiting and finding good, especially leadership level talent. This is something I personally have not nailed. And so I will be the first to admit that I'm not good at hiring leaders in my companies yet. I want to get there. I've had a couple of lucky ones that have done okay, but like this is not my sweet spot. So what have you picked up from running Drive Talent or, your experience in this space about recruiting leaders and especially those kind of young, hungry leaders that are looking to replace that retiring, the older group that's moving on or whatever? Like, give me some insights there.
I'll translate both, like the approach that I've used, where the success has been, and then how that then kind of translates to my values and working with my clients. So, an example I like to share is this woman who joined our team, actually at Waterstone, who started out in a very junior role. She was sourcing for us
Mhm.
on recruiting searches. And in a short amount of time, I don't remember how long, but it was under a year, we started to recognize, I started to see like there's so much more potential. I identified like these are characteristics I'm seeing in her, and her also saying, like, I see where you have pain, where you're the bottleneck on things. Let me help you. And
Mm.
fast forward, she became our director of operations. So it's also, so it's about when I talk with clients, in an ideal world, you're proactive about having conversations opportunistically with people out there where you're like, like they're impressive. I think their
Mm.
background's really interesting. I may not see exact how they directly translate to what I'm needing, but being proactive in developing relationships before you think you need to hire the person. I know that's not always possible, but always be recruiting sounds kind of cliche, but it's the more you can have those like people who are top of mind that you would want to approach when you know you need to switch someone out. The proactive piece, but also I think and you can tell me if you've fallen into this, there's this, especially when hiring at the senior level, is this belief that you kind of get into this job description trap where you want to write the perfect, like if I just include everything in here. Like, I want this ideal person, and I've learned my lessons from what didn't work last time. So let's add that in also. And it just becomes this really lengthy, detailed, where you've narrowed yourself into this tiny little spotted unicorn spot. And
Yeah.
then if you're comparing like anyone you're talking to out there as a potential candidate, and expecting them to check all the boxes is like you're writing a description for a theoretical, hypothetical person rather than letting the talent out in the market kind of drive that, like, you're really, really impressive. I see the translatable skills. Now, that's not to say you need, if you're hiring a CFO, they have to have the, the
Right.
financial background. There are certain boxes that need to be checked from a technical standpoint. But in my ideal dream recruiting world, clients are looking for those translatable, like, these are the things that really matter when it comes to culture and characteristics and passion and what they value.
Yeah, this is a really good something I want to get into this like culture and values fit because I feel like this is probably something that is different between hiring tactical hires who need to do specific skills every day versus more leadership hires who really need to just be more dynamic as people and fit in with the culture so that they can fit in with the people. Because, again, like if I just look for leaders who have like my industry experience, plus they have this pedigree, plus they have these connections, plus they have this, exact turnaround experience that I want them to go through. It's like my list is going to be so small that I'm never going to find the right people. But you're right. Like if I find somebody who's got the right attitude and perspective and values fit, then they can ideally learn to do all those things that we're talking about, or build themselves the solutions they need. So that's a really interesting one. Let's talk about that. Like, how do you start to suss those out when a client comes to you and says, "Hey, I want to hire a leader who does this," and you say, "Okay, let's back up. Like, how do we figure out who you really need or what you really need from that person?"
One of the reasons I'm in recruiting is because I want to know the leader's story too. Like tell me about you and your journey. And because when we kick off an engagement, we want to know so much more about who they are, who the existing leadership team is, who the company is, what their makeup, their story. Um, Before we're getting into like the tactical, let's check these boxes. There's this belief, I think, sometimes when you partner with a recruiter like us, that we are going to have this magic wand. And because I'm paying you or I'm retaining you, then you're going to be able to create this person out of nothing. Like I don't care if they don't exist. I want you to make them exist. And so backing up, we approach it as like, let's back up and understand the genesis of this. First, why are you needing to hire this person? But understanding a bit of their journey. How did you get to this point? And where are you wanting to head? What is your vision for the future? And sometimes in this more detailed assessment, sometimes we even recommend like, I don't know if you need to hire this person yet. What are you thinking about? And there's a situation right now where we're working with a client where they thought they needed to hire a VP. And now, after more assessment, they've decided, you know what, we need to start with a more foundational day-to-day person before, so that VP person coming in is more set up for success. So it's a more consultative approach and more nuanced. It's not like this binary, like we have the need and just fill it for us.
Yeah. There's something else that I was thinking of as I was thinking about leadership hires that I've struggled with, and maybe you see this too. I get kind of intimidated sometimes, and this is totally like this is me being vulnerable and imposter, like revealing my own imposter syndrome that I have. But I'm a small business owner who does like a little bit of everything, but I'm not an expert in, I don't know, let's call it like senior level business operations, or a sales director. Like I'm none of those things. I'm a hack, and I know it and I'm okay with it. Right. Like, but it's gotten me this far and it gets me a certain way. And then I hit this point and I'm like, I need to hire somebody to do this. And I realize I need like a leader. And what I struggle with sometimes, like, I want to bring these people in or talk to these people. I feel a bit intimidated or like, I'm not really sure how I even assess this person, because to me, they all sound great. I don't know anything about this role other than I just made it up.
Right.
How do we overcome that as small business owners? Like maybe you've dealt with that person or seen clients who have, like, how do you get over that and start to figure out like, how do I just objectively look at people who are technically more qualified than me for this role?
Yeah, because it is about you're going to be placing trust in this person they're placing trust in you, as I believe in I believe in your vision. But yeah, trusting that, okay, there's no way you could know all of those things. And when I first started out in executive recruiting, that was my fear, was I'm going to get on the phone with this person who's the chief marketing officer for this Fortune 500 company, and I'm going to ask them embarrassing
A
questions.
stupid question. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And instead, I found first people love telling their stories and talking
Of
about
course.
themselves.
Yeah.
But the more I could just be vulnerable about not knowing and saying, hey, I'm not the expert in what you do. So help me explain it to me in a way, help me understand in a language like kind of layman's terms, for lack of a better word. But help me understand, and what are the things that what should I be asking you about this? Because I'm the business owner and I want you to putting it on them, like putting the ball back in their court to illustrate it for you and explain it for you rather than feeling
Yeah.
like if I ask this question, I'm going to get the right answer. But also, in addition to that, because then you're trust some people interview really well and they could say all the right, and you're like, oh, well, that sounds good because you're
Hmm.
using all these words that seem to fit together. But I do have clients also, I like this the use of a case study or, for example, we're talking about the finance side, like they do a modeling exercise or something where, but something consistent that you use with all of the candidates. And the goal is to then, when they're walking through it with you, explaining it in a way that you understand.
Yeah, that's I like that advice a lot. And this is something I've done. I try to do it with all levels of hires, but is a big part of the job interview is this like real world assessment. It's essentially like a mini version of the job they're going to do day to day for me. And then, like you say, it's not just about, there's no correct answer for it. It's like, yeah, obviously it's partly just seeing how they work and what kinds of questions come up for them and what things they want to know. And then partly it's also, can they explain it to me? Because I am a layman in a lot of these areas. Like most
Right.
small business owners, again, we start off as kind of generalists. We do everything, and then we slowly hire people in to do these roles. And now we become this like, we can fit in and fill in the gaps where we need to, but we're not experts in all the things. We can't be. So I think that's a
Right.
really good point. It's like building assessments that are objective and similar enough between candidates that you're getting a real, look at them. That's a really good idea and really good practice. How does that come up in, give me some other examples. You mentioned the finance one. So maybe you build out a financial model. Like what are some other ways you can assess leaders like that with some real world-ish type assessments?
I'm a huge fan of the StrengthsFinder, the Gallup
Yeah.
StrengthsFinder.
Yep.
And I have found that to be, when given the opportunity, when clients don't have a go-to assessment that they like to use. And that's really more, it's not, of course, legally, these cannot be used as like a decision, maker for you. Like, should I be hiring this person or not? It's more, it's looking for that alignment and complements to you as a CEO founder. It's like, how are we going to complement each other? How, in the Strengths Finder, like doing it side by side, your, your Strengths Finder, it's similar to, what is it? The culture index that I know
Yep.
a lot of people are fans of in EO, but side by side, seeing how you'll work with each other. Where will some of the pitfalls be when your strengths are maybe gone, they go to extreme and they become something that's more challenging. So I do like that, but there's something that we use. So many of our clients they'll have an internal recruiting team or interview team where they're like, okay,
Yeah.
I don't know, as a founder, I don't know as much about this piece, like the marketing or the finance or the operational. So I'm going to have the more visionary conversation. Then I want these other people to kind of fill in the blanks. Now, I understand with smaller professional services firms, you don't always have that. But one of the tools that we created and use quite a bit is this journeying format where, and I don't know, this may not be really answering a question about the technical assessment, but it's more getting to that culture piece and
Yeah.
the fit is, it's a very simple framework where we add on like 15, 20 minutes to the end of your typical, initial conversation. And we ask, tell me about, like, look back at your life, as think of it as a journey. You can go as far back as you want, but think about, at what point did you encounter a fork in the road where you needed to make a decision
Mhm.
to take, right or left or down the middle? And what was the situation? What was the decision to be made? And what did you decide? And then what did you learn from that? And how did that kind of guide, where you went from there? And tell me about the next fork in the road on. And I'm telling you, Karl, the stories that we have heard have just been incredible. Like, you would never know, having a more technical conversation with someone, and then you add that on at the end, and it just
Mm.
opens up
Yeah.
so much more about who this person is and how they might fit with your team and culture. We've had clients that have said, like, "Oh my gosh, like, I was excited about this guy, and now I'm even now that I've heard his story, I'm even more excited. Yeah.
Yeah, I like this a lot because you're seeing how they approach problems or challenges or a change in their career. And all these things are the reality of being in a small business is that things will change, like, and probably in
Right.
big business too, but like, especially in a smaller company, like the role I'm hiring you for today may be different in 6 or 12 months. Just, again, transparently, I'm not promising you that this exact job description is exactly what you'll do for 2 years. Like that's a little bit, I would be naive to do that. So I think that's a good point is you're assessing almost how they handle those changes and disruptions and unexpected things as much as just the day to day of this role, which is really good.
That's a
Oh,
really
sorry.
good point, the agility. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up because yeah, the agility, the adaptability, ability to learn things quickly, and that they don't hold on to something and are not willing to let go.
Yeah. Another thing that those kind of stories always show for me is how much the candidate blames other people versus takes responsibility for
Absolutely.
themselves. And that's
Yes.
so huge, that personal accountability thing, and this is maybe tips for job hunters who may be listening in occasionally. Like, goodness, there's nothing worse as a hiring manager than to hear somebody blaming their former employer for
Yes.
anything. And look, I know it's probably their fault. It probably, you're probably right, but that doesn't, like, as soon as you do
Yeah.
that, I'm like, well, this is just how you think of employers as like the person to blame. And I don't want to be your next person to blame. So I'm just going to kind of like separate immediately. This is a huge turn off and like red flag for me. But there's something real quick I want to go back to on the leadership hiring before we move on to some other topics. So you kind of touched on this, was like, think about opportunistic hires. Like whenever there's an opportunity for someone in your industry that may be a good hire in the future, get to know them, stay in touch with them. I think that's great advice. How else can we as small business owners think about making our businesses more attractive to the top level leadership talent? Because it's hard for us. We can't compete on salary, almost never. We can't compete on benefits. We can't compete on the, like, there's certain areas we're just not going to win, but there's certain other areas I think we do have strength. So like what do you advise clients on with that?
Time and time again, I have examples of, like, being able to attract someone from what you would think is like, "Oh, they're so well established, it's a bigger company, they have all this money behind them," and there are people out there where they love the idea, joining something that is smaller, where it's not about them like, "Oh, I'm a big fish now in a small pond." It's more the excitement about being a part of something that is growing. And that doesn't mean it
Yeah.
has to be like, "Oh, I'm gonna be 10x in, 3 years and jump on for the ride." It's more, you can get a lot of people on board by first checking in with, like, what are you truly passionate about? Because if you're not authentic in that, they will see through that. They'll call bullshit on it.
Yeah.
First, before you're having these conversations, is getting really clear on what do you wholeheartedly believe in with your business? And like, I'm excited about this. And so I'm excited to share that story. And there are leaders out there who will see, like, I want to be a part of that and I want to help you grow.
I agree. I think like when I think of the best leaders who I've worked with at small businesses, they wanted to make a outsized impact, not just have money behind them or have a big bureaucracy or big name recognition. My analogy, I've said this a few times on the show, like my first internship was at GE Appliances, and like GE is a huge company, and like for an engineer who's a freshman in college getting an internship there, it's like sounds really great, right? It was the worst. I mean, like, no knock on GE. For me, it was the worst job possible because it was just
Are you
it
blaming the
was so,
employer, Carl?
not at all, not at all, Kimley. But it was just so not my style. And in hindsight, like I now realize that because I've had
Yeah.
that experience. But like
Yeah.
I'm a move fast and break things person. I love
Mhm.
smaller companies. I love the autonomy and the like wide leash. And GE is very bureaucratic and very conservative, and like any big company would be. It's got this hierarchy. It's very rigid, and it's just not a place that excited me. Like doesn't matter how big the name recognition is or how great the pay was or whatever. Like a small company easily could poach people from there who are stuck in the wrong kind of environment. So I think this
Right.
is again where like you're right. Like there's the right kind of candidate who may just want something totally different, and it
Yes.
may not be getting it, even if the money is better at another place.
I see a lot of people where they started with the big companies first to get the foundation, learn as much as they could, but that they had that entrepreneurial spirit and it's in
Yeah.
them, even if they are in a larger company.
So another thing I want to kind of, because this is a sort of a fun topic, but what are some of the red flags that you've collected over the years for candidates? In other words, like what kind of candidates look good but turn out to be really bad? And for, what are some of the things that you look for that you kind of warn employers about, or maybe you just avoid candidates, sending candidates who have those traits or issues? Anything we can mention there?
So this is going to sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth because I'm not. I discourage very long, lengthy interview processes
Yeah.
where you're having them meet with like everyone on the team and everyone gets a say on who you're going to be hiring. But there is something to be said about getting to know them in different ways. So whether you start out with a call conference, have them meet with them in person, go to lunch, like these different ways to get to know them. Um, because over time, and I'm not saying a lengthy time, but I mean this can be compressed into a 2 or 3 week or 3 or 4 week interview cycle. But and it's hard for me to because there's so much this intuitive now after doing this for so long where I hear something in the first conversation, I'm like, nope, this is not going to work. Inconsistencies, if you start to see
Mm,
inconsistencies in what they've
yeah.
been saying, or if there's either a lot of I or we. So if they're always saying we, it's like, well, what did you own? What were you responsible for? Or if they're always saying I, then it's like, oh, is there too much of an ego here? And were you collaborating with
Totally.
what I've learned over time is like listen to that. If there's a little hint that they give you in the conversation, for example, that I had a candidate where they mentioned something about um how they were up super or out super late and only had a couple hours of sleep and had to run into work and um kind of a bunch of balls dropped. But this was not just one, and this is not, I have to be careful here because there's also things that you cannot, say you're not going to hire someone for. But it was
Right.
repeated pattern. And then on
Right.
video conference, notice like, like it's not a very professional setting they're in. There's a lot
Hmm.
of kind of disarray behind it. Seems like what's going on here. And the person ended up and I didn't listen to those, honestly, my mistake was not listening to those, the tug, like, something's going
Yeah.
on here that maybe you need to ask about, well, that's more related to the job, but still getting into what's the story, and ended up placing the person, and within a couple weeks, they were let go because
Yeah.
they were not able to show up on time.
Yeah.
A lot of things were so it was just these little listen to your gut, I think is the quick answer. And you can't hire just on gut because there's a
Yeah.
lot of reasons
Yeah.
that's wrong because then you're hiring people who are exactly like you and there's
Yeah. You said something there, and I'll say it maybe more directly because I'm
yeah,
not as worried about getting sued for it. But like, if a candidate's personal life is in disarray and it becomes clear in the interview process, that's just a preview of what you're going to see when you work with them, right? And
exactly.
I'm
Yeah.
not saying I wouldn't hire somebody because they have personal troubles at all. I mean, I've had, well, like, we all got personal troubles, right? Like, I got two kids, and half the time they're off school and they're walking in on me in meetings. Like, it's annoying and whatever. But like,
Yeah.
that's not a reason I'm going to disbar somebody from hiring. But
Yeah.
like you say, this kind of example of like things are falling apart in their life and they can't keep it together. That's a red flag. I hate to say it. That's a you need to go figure that out first, and then let's talk. You
Yes.
might be great,
Absolutely.
but
Yeah.
yeah, there's limits there. And you're right. Like it's a fine line, but I do think that listening to that and not assuming that's going to change just because they get this job with you is probably
Exactly.
safe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also more subtle things like, for example, I listen for, um, do they go on, have I had an opportunity to say anything or ask a question? For like sometimes there's a run-on sentence that will go for 20 minutes. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, like you
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
checked in
That's
with
tough. Yeah.
me. You never, so yeah, self-awareness, I think, of
Hmm.
Or is it all about them? Is there an egoic thing going on where
Yeah.
um, that's something else I listen for.
For sure, self-awareness, for sure that kind of like understanding this is a conversation, especially in the first call when they don't have any questions or don't have any, back and forth. And it's just all like, yeah. I had one candidate I remember recently who I asked the first question and he was off to the races. I never got a chance again to come back in. And it was like, I was like, oh, well, I had to cut him off. Our time was up. And I was like, you just
Yeah.
talked for 30 minutes straight. Like and again,
Yes.
it wasn't incoherent or terrible, but it was like, that's just not aware of the situation here.
Yes. And at times where I think, oh, with the little coaching, because there's also this very empathic side to me where I'm like, if they just had a little coaching on this, maybe it'd be able to. But people also show you who they are, and some things are coachable and some things are not. And I'm not saying that person's not a fit for anything. It's more for, okay,
Yeah.
for my client, knowing how they are. Maybe my client is very to the point, they're private equity and they want to be in 5-minute meetings, not 30-minute meetings. So something like that, I know right away, it's not going to be right.
All right, last round of questions here for you is let's talk about hiring best practices. And so this is kind of the flip side. As an employer, what are some of the things that I should do to build a really good process or to get people, in the door the best way possible, or maybe even like get the right kinds of candidates lined up? Like some of the things that you guys help with, but in general, make companies most successful when it comes to hiring.
Multi-prong approach. So I discourage like we call it posting and praying, like putting up a job post and then praying that people will apply. Um, so multi-prong means yes, you can do the job posting, but also be out there proactively connecting, asking for referrals, using your network to say, who do you know that's good? And then we use a blend of technology and then our own proactive outreach. But we're a fan of, I don't know if it's like a product endorsement, but we do love Juicebox. Juicebox has
Hmm.
been really good for like sourcing and kind of sequencing of getting messaging out. But we use a lot of so not putting all your eggs in one basket to identify the talent. And I think getting out there, like grabbing, if there's someone they're really well connected, say, hey, can we grab coffee? I want to just,
Hmm.
share what we're up to and see what you're up to and still make it more of a conversation, but tap into your network as much as you can. And we've talked about the job descriptions, making sure that's not your Bible. Everything has to be in the job description. Interview process, really thinking about who's going to be a great brand ambassador for my company, like who represents really well who we are, and they're on the interview team, regardless
Yeah.
of their knowledge. So I always say, like, do not, I would max out in my dream world, it would be 3 to 4 interviews. That doesn't mean they can be in depth, but even though I think a lot of employers today think that it's an employer market, you hear about job contraction. There's not as many jobs out there, too many job seekers. All this, it really for the top talent or people you're looking for, it's always competitive. So if
Yeah,
you're putting
for
them
sure.
through the ringer and dragging it out over months, you're going to lose people.
Yeah, that timing piece is I agree totally. Like when it comes to average employees or below average people, you might have plenty of time to go through 6 interviews. My wife works in healthcare for a very large hospital, and it
Yeah,
takes 3 months to hire people. And it's
yeah,
partly interviews, partly it's just the HR process. They lose almost every first pick candidate they have because that person gets another
yeah,
job. I mean, 3 months is just too long. Nobody goes unemployed for 3 months waiting for you to say yes. So
right.
it's brutal, and it really causes them to lose a lot of good people that
Yeah,
other hospitals that move faster can get. So something to keep in mind for us, those of us running smaller companies, is like the more accelerated you can make that pace, the more you can compete again on the something
yes.
that bigger companies maybe can't.
Yeah, making them feel wanted goes a long way. It
Yeah.
really does. And I have also seen it's nice to when I've worked with clients where they can block and say, you know what, Friday afternoons are going to be our interview times, or Fridays are blocked for this, making it a priority because it is, time kills all deals. And so, yeah, and I know it's tough. It's really tough to balance it all and have availability but yeah, I think we're saying
Yeah.
the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. It's like a lot of things. It's short-term pain for long-term gain. And so you
Yeah.
have to be ready to take a little
Yeah.
bit of a hit in productivity for a month or two while you're doing this hire, and then you hopefully gain it back in the future. Yeah, one of the other things I'll throw out there too, because I'm still I feel like I'm still in the novice category as far as the hiring goes. But one thing that's helped me a lot personally has been if I have a job role out that is totally new, like first time I hire a salesperson or something for a company, the thing that I will do is go talk to 5 to 10 people in my network or that I can get introductions to who do that role somewhere else or have done that role in the last few years. And my conversation is basically just like, what do I do to hire a really good person like you in this role? Two things happen from that. One is I get really good ammo for what should the job description really have and what do I really need to care about? Because after you have 10 of those conversations, you
Right.
see 3 or 4 things always come up. So those are probably the biggest
Yeah.
deals. And then a lot of things are like optional, and that's good to know. And then the other thing that comes out of it almost every time is referrals to candidates, or those people come in and
Exactly.
say, oh, yeah, I'd love to apply for that. That sounds great. I'm looking for something new. And it's like,
Yeah.
it just, again, it's not that I'm necessarily intentionally approaching it that way, but it certainly doesn't hurt to kind of give them a quick pitch on what you're looking for and why this is such a great role. And I've hired a lot of people that way. And um, whether I hired them or just at least got intel from them, huge help. Because again, I'm a generalist. I don't know what a salesperson should do at a small agency. I'm hiring my first
Right.
one. What do I? So it's great to get that. And the other thing just echoes what you already mentioned, which is having a rubric or job description that is very clear on what are the non-negotiables. And then again, you can have a long tail of ideal things, but like
Right.
really get strict on what are your 3 or 4. And I always limit it to 4 things that are like
Yes.
non-negotiable. Everything else is
Yeah.
negotiable and like trade-offs. And once we all agree on those 3 or 4
Exactly.
things, it's a lot easier to objectively compare candidates because otherwise you get into this like, well, I like the way this guy does this, and I like the way this girl does this, and you're like, but that's not like what are our
Right.
4 criteria? Rank them on those 4 criteria. Boom, that's it. And it's like, I'm sure you might lose some
Yes.
some people who just don't interview well, but you're always going to lose that. It's like that's always a problem, and so at least this gets us aligned around
Yeah.
something objective. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. It reminds me of the going back to the ask kind of meeting with people who are doing it and understanding their roles that yeah, I have found when I go to people asking for help to brainstorm on something or, help me understand it better, talk me through this, that it does yield, talent, new
Yeah,
people I can talk to. And
that's right.
oftentimes when you're right, when I do ask them, can you help me out with this? They say, well, I might be interested in this.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. When really underneath that probably was my motivation.
Right. Of course, there's an adage in startup world, which the first few years of my career, I was in these venture funded startups where the founders had to go raise money, and every 12 months it was back to the raise money cycle. And there's an adage there that's like, if you want investment, go ask investors for help. Just ask them for advice and help. If you actually
Yeah.
want advice and help, go ask them for an investment because they'll give you all their critiques and feedback then. But it's like there's this kind of law of attraction of like you put ideas out there, and sometimes by not asking directly, people actually kind of feel like they actually do want that. So maybe it's
Yes.
some
Yes.
reverse psychology or
Psychology
something.
of it.
But
Yes.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. I definitely don't think about that deeply. I legitimately do like to have those conversations with people who have done the role because it clearly sets me up for like what is a good, I get to calibrate it around what are some of the things that matter. But again, you figure those people know other people who do that role or have done it, and they're likely to say something if it comes up.
Yeah. And people
Um,
love to talk about themselves. They
of
love to
course,
share
of
their
course.
experience and yeah.
Yeah, that's why I have a podcast so other people can talk about themselves. um, so
Right on.
as we wrap up here, Kimley, because I know we're coming up to time. Last thing I wanted to ask you, which is kind of a fun one, is has there been any books you've read in the last year or two that have really impacted you from as a business owner, whether they're technical business books or more high level philosophical or even fiction books?
This is a great question because my problem is I have too many. If you look at my nightstand, I have like 5 books piled up. And so I'll start them and then I'll like jump to the next one, jump back and forth. But the one I did just finish a book. It's not a business book in any way, but it's actually helped me quite a bit in just getting grounded in business, called The Girl Who Baptized Herself by Megan Watterson. And so regardless of spiritual, beliefs, denominational, it's a fascinating history, like historical perspective. I don't know, need to go into detail about it. The other one, actually a fellow EO member recommended it, Children of Time. And there's a trilogy. So I think that's the first book in the series. And so I'm reading it today and I love it. It's very science fiction-ish space stuff that is fascinating, but it's long. And I'll admit I'm about 2/3 through and I'm like, well, I don't know if I'm going to.
Are you a big science fiction fan?
I wasn't. I never was as a kid, and that's just been growing more and ties in with the recruiting for aerospace, that touches on aerospace industry. And When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron. That's, I don't know if you read that. I really enjoyed that. That also had a big impact on me.
Cool. Oh man, you gave me a bunch of new ones. No, I haven't read any of these, so this is great. Yeah, no, I'm a big it's similar. I've always got at least a couple books going, and I never finish as many as I want, but I always plug through, and I revert to the audiobook when I really struggle, and then I can do it while I'm out for my runs or something. But
yes.
Well, cool. Kimley, anything worth mentioning or plugging around Drive Talent? DriveTalent.co is your website. So if people happen to be listening, they're in the manufacturing space, they can reach out to you, or maybe they reach out to you for other things too. You may have referrals for other kinds of recruiters, but anything else we can plug?
DriveTalent.co. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I also, I would love if anyone in manufacturing, if they say, we'd love to have you out and just tour our site, because I am such a nerd about this stuff, to see what their day-to-day looks like and see their operation. Would love an invite like that. But connecting with me on LinkedIn is also, and follow me on LinkedIn is a great way to just to initially get connected.
Awesome. Thanks so much for the time, Kimley. This has been fun. We'll have to do it again in another year or two just to catch back up with you.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you for watching this episode of Retain Trust. If you like this one, give it a thumbs up and subscribe on YouTube. It takes 2 seconds and it helps others find out about the show. And if you have questions or suggestions for a future episode, leave a comment. See you next time.